Welcome to the Story Lab. I hope you enjoy this story. Let's begin. My phone buzzed as I was settling in for a quiet evening at home. Isabella, my wife, had gone out with her best friend Gina for what she called a girls' night. I glanced at the screen and saw a message from my friend Lucas. "You need to see this." There was a link attached. Curiosity piqued. I tapped it, not knowing my world was about to shatter. The link opened to a live stream. At first, all I saw was a dimly lit room filled with people, music thumping in the background. Then the camera panned, and my heart stopped. There was Isabella, my wife, giving a lap dance to another man. I couldn't breathe. My fingers tightened around the phone as I watched, unable to look away. Isabella's hips swayed as she grinded against the stranger, her face flushed with excitement. The man's hands roamed her body freely, and she didn't stop him. My phone buzzed again. Another message from Lucas. "Sebastian, I'm so sorry. I thought you should know." I typed back with shaking hands, "Who's the guy?" Lucas's reply came quickly. "Trevor. Works with Isabella." Trevor. The name ignited a fire in my chest. I'd heard Isabella mention him before, always casually. "Just a coworker," she'd said. Nothing more. I forced myself to keep watching, downloading the video as evidence. My mind raced, recalling Isabella's words from earlier. "I'm just going out with Gina," she'd said, kissing me on the cheek. "Don't wait up, honey." The lie burned like acid in my throat. I watched as Isabella leaned in close to Trevor, whispering something in his ear that made him laugh. My stomach churned. I had to know where they were. I studied the video, looking for clues. In the background, I spotted a neon sign, the Blue Lagoon. I knew that club. It was downtown, about 20 minutes away. Without thinking, I grabbed my keys and headed for the door. As I drove, my mind raced with questions. How long had this been going on? Was this the first time, or just the first time I'd caught them? The streets blurred as I sped towards the club, my hands gripping the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles turned white. I kept seeing Isabella's face, flushed with excitement as she danced for Trevor. When I pulled up to the Blue Lagoon, I sat in the car for a moment, trying to calm my racing heart. Part of me wanted to turn around and go home, to pretend I'd never seen the video, but I knew I couldn't. I had to confront this head-on. I stepped out of the car and walked towards the entrance, my legs feeling like lead. The bouncer gave me a once-over and nodded, letting me in without a word. The club was packed, bodies pressed together on the dance floor. The air was thick with the smell of sweat and alcohol. My eyes scanned the room, searching for Isabella. And then I saw her. She was at the bar with Trevor, laughing at something he'd said. His hand rested on her lower back, fingers splayed possessively. Neither of them had noticed me yet. I pushed through the crowd, my vision tunneling until all I could see was them. As I got closer, I could hear snippets of their conversation over the pounding music. "You're amazing, Isabella," Trevor was saying, leaning in close. "I can't believe we waited so long to do this." Isabella giggled, her hand on his chest. "Better late than never, right?" I was right behind them now. "Is that right?" I said, my voice cutting through their laughter. They both spun around, faces pale with shock. Isabella's eyes widened in horror. "Sebastian," she gasped, "what are you doing here?" I laughed bitterly. "Funny, I was about to ask you the same thing." The club seemed to fade away as I stared at Isabella and Trevor. The pounding music became a distant roar in my ears. All I could focus on was the look of guilt on my wife's face and the growing panic in Trevor's eyes. "Sebastian, I can explain," Isabella started, her voice trembling. I cut her off. "Explain what?" "How you lied to me about going out with Gina, or how you've been cheating on me with your coworker." Trevor stepped forward, hands raised placatingly. "Look, man, this isn't what it looks like." "Save it," I snapped. "I saw the live stream. I saw everything." Isabella's face drained of color. "Live stream? What are you talking about?" I pulled out my phone and showed them the video, which was still streaming. Isabella's eyes widened in horror as she watched herself grinding against Trevor. "Oh God," she whispered. I turned to address the growing crowd around us. "Ladies and gentlemen, allow me to introduce you to my wife, Isabella. She told me she was having a girls' night out, but instead, She's here cheating on me with her coworker. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Some people had their phones out, recording the scene. I noticed Gina pushing her way through the crowd, her face a mask of shock and guilt. Sebastian, please, Isabella begged, grabbing my arm. Can we talk about this in private? I jerked my arm away. Why? You didn't seem to care about privacy when you were broadcasting your little show to the world. Trevor tried to intervene again. Listen, Sebastian, this is all a misunderstanding. I rounded on him, fury boiling over. A misunderstanding? You were feeling up my wife on a live stream, and you call that a misunderstanding? It was just dancing, Trevor protested weakly. Just dancing? I laughed humorlessly. Is that what you call it when you're groping someone else's wife? Isabella stepped between us, tears streaming down her face. Sebastian, please, I'm so sorry. It was a mistake. It didn't mean anything. Her words only fueled my anger. A mistake? You accidentally ended up giving a lap dance to your coworker? You accidentally lied to me about where you were going? I never meant to hurt you, she sobbed. Well, congratulations, I spat. You failed spectacularly. Gina finally reached us, her face pale. Sebastian, I'm so sorry. I had no idea. I turned on her. No idea? You're her best friend. You expect me to believe you didn't know about this? Gina flinched at my tone. I swear, Sebastian. She told me she was meeting Trevor to discuss work. I didn't know. It doesn't matter, I said, turning back to Isabella. None of it matters anymore. Isabella reached for me again. Sebastian, please. We can work this out. I love you. I stepped back, out of her reach. If you loved me, we wouldn't be here right now. What are you saying? Isabella asked, her voice small and frightened. I looked her straight in the eye. I'm saying it's over, Isabella. I want a divorce. A collective gasp went through the crowd. Isabella's face crumpled, and she began to sob in earnest. No, Sebastian, please, she begged. Don't do this. We can fix this. I shook my head. There's nothing to fix. You broke us, Isabella. You and Trevor. I turned to Trevor, who had been trying to slink away. And you. You made a huge mistake getting involved with my wife. I hope it was worth it. Trevor paled. Sebastian, I never meant. Save it. I cut him off. I don't want to hear your excuses. Just know that this isn't over. Not by a long shot. I looked around at the crowd, many of whom were still recording. I hope you all enjoyed the show, I said bitterly, because this is the last one you're going to get from me. With that, I turned and walked away, leaving Isabella sobbing behind me. I could hear her calling my name, begging me to come back, but I didn't turn around. I pushed through the crowd, ignoring the whispers and stares. As I stepped out into the cool night air, I felt hollow. The anger that had fueled me inside the club was fading, leaving behind a deep, aching pain. I stumbled to my car and sat there for a long moment, my hands shaking as I gripped the steering wheel. What was I going to do now? Where could I go? The thought of returning to the home I shared with Isabella made me feel physically ill. I needed somewhere safe, somewhere I could process what had just happened. With trembling fingers, I pulled out my phone and dialed Lucas's number. He answered on the first ring. Sebastian, are you okay? I let out a shaky breath. No, I'm not. Can I come over? Of course, Lucas said without hesitation. I'll be waiting. I started the car and pulled away from the club, leaving behind the shattered remains of my marriage. As I drove through the quiet streets, I tried to wrap my mind around how my life had changed so dramatically in just a few short hours. One thing was certain, nothing would ever be the same again. The drive to Lucas's house was a blur. I found myself parked in his driveway without any real memory of how I got there. My hands were still shaking as I turned off the engine and just sat there, staring blankly at the steering wheel. A knock on the window startled me. Lucas stood there, concern etched on his face. I got out of the car, my legs feeling unsteady. Sebastian, Lucas said, pulling me into a tight hug. I'm so sorry, man. The simple act of kindness nearly broke me. I felt tears stinging my eyes and blinked them back furiously. Thanks for letting me come over, I managed to say. Lucas led me inside, his hand on my shoulder. Of course. You can stay as long as you need. We settled in his living room, Lucas grabbing us both a beer from the fridge. I took a long swig, hoping the alcohol might dull the ache in my chest. Want to talk about it? Lucas asked gently. I let out a humorless laugh. What's there to talk about? My wife's been cheating on me with her coworker. I confronted them at the club and told her I want a divorce. End of story. Lucas winced. That must have been brutal. How are you holding up? I don't know, I admitted. It doesn't feel real yet. Like I'm going to wake up and find out this was all some horrible nightmare. I wish it was, Lucas said. But you know I'm here for you, right? Whatever you need. I nodded, grateful for his support. Thanks, Lucas. I don't know what I'd do without you. We sat in silence for a while, each lost in our own thoughts. Finally, Lucas spoke up. You know, as your friend, I want nothing more than to go punch Trevor's lights out. But as your lawyer, I have to advise against that. Despite everything, I felt a small smile tug at my lips. You offering your services? Lucas nodded seriously. Absolutely. We need to start thinking about how to protect you legally. The divorce, division of assets, all of that. The reality of the situation started to sink in. God, I hadn't even thought about all that yet. That's why you've got me, Lucas said. We'll take it one step at a time. First thing tomorrow, we'll start gathering evidence. That live stream video is going to be crucial. I nodded, feeling a bit more grounded with a plan starting to form. What do you think my chances are? In the divorce, I mean? Lucas leaned forward, his expression serious. With the evidence we have? Pretty good. Isabella was clearly in the wrong here. But we need to be smart about this. No confrontations, no threats. We play this by the book. Agreed, I said. I just want this over with as quickly and cleanly as possible. We spent the next hour discussing strategy, Lucas explaining the legal process and what I could expect in the coming weeks. It was overwhelming, but having a plan helped keep me focused, preventing me from spiraling into despair. As the night wore on, exhaustion started to creep in. Lucas noticed me struggling to keep my eyes open. You should get some sleep, he said. Guest room's all set up for you. I nodded gratefully. Thanks, Lucas. For everything. He clasped my shoulder. That's what friends are for. We'll get through this, Sebastian. I promise. I headed to the guest room, my body feeling heavy with fatigue. As I lay in bed, staring at the unfamiliar ceiling, the events of the night played on a loop in my mind. Isabella's face when I confronted her, the look of guilt and panic in her eyes, the feeling of my world crumbling around me. Sleep eluded me for hours. When I finally drifted off, my dreams were a chaotic mix of memories and nightmares, all centered around Isabella's betrayal. I woke up the next morning feeling groggy and disoriented. For a blissful moment, I forgot where I was and why. Then reality came crashing back, and the pain in my chest returned full force. I dragged myself out of bed and into the kitchen, where Lucas was already up and making coffee. Morning, he said, sliding a mug towards me. How'd you sleep? Like crap, I admitted, taking a grateful sip of the strong brew. Thanks for the coffee. Lucas nodded, his expression sympathetic. I've been doing some research. We should start gathering all the financial documents you can get your hands on. Bank statements, tax returns, that sort of thing. I nodded, grateful for the distraction of practical matters. I can access most of that online. I'll start pulling it together today. Just then, my phone buzzed. I looked at it warily, half expecting it to be Isabella. Instead, I saw a notification from a news app. My blood ran cold as I read the headline. Local man publicly accuses wife of cheating in viral club video. Lucas, I said, my voice shaking. You need to see this. I handed him the phone, watching as his eyes widened in shock. Well, shit, he muttered. This complicates things. I sank into a chair, my head in my hands. What do we do now? Lucas was quiet for a moment, thinking, we need to get ahead of this. Control the narrative before Isabella or Trevor can spin it their way. I looked up at him, feeling a spark of determination through the fog of despair. You're right. No more being the victim. It's time to fight back. Lucas nodded, a glint of approval in his eyes. That's the spirit. We'll get through this, Sebastian. one step at a time. As we started to plan our next moves, I felt a mix of emotions swirling inside me. Anger, hurt, betrayal, but also a growing resolve. Isabella had torn my world apart, but I wasn't going to let her destroy me. With Lucas by my side, I was ready to face whatever came next. Little did I know, the battle was just beginning. The next few days passed in a blur of legal consultations and sleepless nights. I was staying at Lucas's place, unable to face returning to the home I'd shared with Isabella. The betrayal still felt raw, like an open wound that refused to heal. One morning, as we sat in Lucas's kitchen sipping coffee, he looked at me with concern. "Sebastian, we need to talk about next steps," Lucas said, his tone serious. I nodded, setting down my mug. "I'm listening." Lucas leaned forward. "The assault allegations Isabella made against you? We've got them covered. Your home security footage proves you were here that night. But we need to think bigger picture now." "What do you mean?" I asked. What do you want out of this divorce? Beyond just ending the marriage?" I thought for a moment, feeling a surge of anger. "I want justice, Lucas. I want Isabella and Trevor to face consequences for what they did." Lucas nodded slowly. "I figured you might say that. Look, as your lawyer, I have to advise caution. But as your friend, I think it's time we fight fire with fire." I raised an eyebrow. "What did you have in mind?" "We gather evidence," Lucas said. "Everything we can on their affair, on Trevor's background. We build a case so strong they won't know what hit them." "And then what?" I asked. Lucas's eyes gleamed. "Then we use it to ensure you get everything you deserve in the divorce, to make sure they can't hurt you again." I felt a spark of something like hope for the first time in days. "Where do we start?" "First, we need more intel," Lucas said. "I was thinking we could bring in your cousin Anna. She's a private investigator, right?" I nodded. "Yeah, she is. You think she'd help?" "Only one way to find out," Lucas said, sliding his phone towards me. "Give her a call." I dialed Anna's number, my heart pounding. She picked up on the third ring. "Sebastian? Is everything okay?" Anna's voice was filled with concern. "Not really," I admitted. "Anna, I need your help. Professionally." There was a pause. "What's going on?" I took a deep breath and explained the situation. Isabella's affair, the public confrontation, the false assault allegations. Anna listened without interrupting. When I finished, she let out a low whistle. "Damn, Seb. I'm so sorry. Of course I'll help. What do you need?" "We need dirt," I said bluntly, "on Isabella and Trevor. Anything you can find." "Consider it done," Anna said without hesitation. "I'll start digging right away." After I hung up, Lucas looked at me approvingly. "Good. That's a start. Now, let's talk strategy. We need to hit them where it hurts." "Their jobs," I said suddenly. "They work together, right? That's got to be against company policy." Lucas snapped his fingers. "Exactly. If we can get them fired, that's a major blow. Plus, it'll look bad in the divorce proceedings." We spent the next few hours outlining our plan of attack. By the time we finished, I felt a grim sense of satisfaction. "You sure you want to go through with this?" Lucas asked. "Once we start, there's no going back." I met his gaze steadily. "I'm sure. They made their choice. Now they have to live with the consequences." Lucas nodded. "All right then. Let's get to work." As we began gathering evidence and making calls, I felt a mix of emotions. Anger, hurt, but also a growing sense of purpose. Isabella and Trevor had no idea what was coming their way. A week into our plan, things were moving faster than I'd expected. Anna had come through with a goldmine of information, and Lucas and I were ready to make our move. "You ready for this?" Lucas asked as we sat in his office, preparing to make the call that would change everything. I took a deep breath. "As ready as I'll ever be." Lucas dialed the number for Isabella and Trevor's company, putting it on speaker. A receptionist answered. "Hello. I'd like to speak with your HR department," Lucas said smoothly. "It's regarding a sensitive matter involving 2 of your employees." We were transferred to HR, and a woman named Janet came on the line. "This is Janet from HR. How can I help you?" Lucas cleared his throat. "Janet, I'm calling to report a serious violation of company policy." It involves Isabella Bennett and Trevor Lawson. There was a pause. I see. Can you elaborate on the nature of this violation? Certainly, Lucas said. We have evidence of these two employees engaging in an inappropriate sexual relationship, including public displays that have damaged the company's reputation. That's a serious allegation, Janet said, her voice tight. Do you have proof? We do, Lucas confirmed. I'm emailing you a video link now. I warn you, the content is explicit. We heard Janet typing, then a sharp intake of breath. Oh my, she murmured. As you can see, Lucas continued, this behavior is completely unacceptable for company employees. Not to mention the potential legal ramifications if this were to become public. Janet's voice was strained when she spoke again. Thank you for bringing this to our attention. We'll handle this matter immediately. After we hung up, I looked at Lucas. You think it worked? He nodded. Oh, it worked. They'll both be out of a job by the end of the day. True to Lucas's prediction, Anna called us that evening with an update. It's done, she said. Isabella and Trevor were both fired this afternoon, escorted out of the building by security. I felt a mix of satisfaction and a twinge of guilt. Good, I said, pushing the guilt aside. What's next? Anna's voice turned serious. Sebastian, there's something else you need to know. I've been digging into Trevor's financials, and something's not adding up. What do you mean? I asked, frowning. Large sums of money moving through his accounts, Anna explained. Way more than his salary could explain. I think he might be embezzling from the company. Lucas and I exchanged a look. Can you prove it? I asked. Not definitively, Anna admitted, but I've got enough evidence to raise some serious red flags. Lucas leaned forward. Send us everything you've got. We might be able to use this. After Anna hung up, Lucas turned to me. We need to think carefully about our next move. If Trevor really is embezzling, that's a game changer. I nodded slowly. We tip off the authorities. Let them investigate. Are you sure? Lucas asked. Once we do that, there's no going back. I met his gaze steadily. I'm sure. He made his bed. Now he can lie in it. Lucas nodded, reaching for his phone. I've got a contact in the white-collar crime division. I'll make the call. As Lucas spoke quietly on the phone, I stared out the window, lost in thought. Was I going too far? Then I remembered Isabella's betrayal, the humiliation I'd felt, and my resolve hardened. Lucas hung up and turned to me. It's done. They'll start investigating tomorrow. I nodded, feeling a strange mix of emotions. What about Isabella? She's living with Trevor, right? For now, Lucas said, but I've got an idea about that. Remember the live stream video? I winced at the memory. How could I forget? Well, Lucas said, a glint in his eye, I bet Trevor's landlord would be very interested to see what kind of activities are happening in his property. I raised an eyebrow. You think we can get them evicted? Lucas grinned. I think it's worth a shot. What do you say we pay the landlord a visit? The next day, we met with Trevor's landlord, a stern-looking man named Mr. Patel. We showed him the video, explaining the situation. Mr. Patel's face grew increasingly red as he watched. This is unacceptable, he sputtered. Completely against the terms of the lease. We thought you should know, I said innocently. Mr. Patel nodded vigorously. Thank you for bringing this to my attention. I'll start eviction proceedings immediately. As we left Mr. Patel's office, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. You think it'll work? I asked Lucas. He clapped me on the back. Oh, it'll work. Isabella and Trevor are about to find themselves out on the street. I nodded, a grim satisfaction settling over me. The pieces of our plan were falling into place, and Isabella and Trevor were about to learn that actions have consequences. A week after our meeting with Mr. Patel, Anna called with an update. It's done, she said. Isabella and Trevor have been evicted. They're scrambling to find a place to stay. I felt a mix of emotions at the news. Any idea where they're going? That's the interesting part, Anna said. Trevor's bailed. Word is, he's moved in with a friend, leaving Isabella high and dry. I couldn't help but feel a twinge of satisfaction. Karma's a bitch, isn't it? Anna's voice turned serious. Sebastian, there's more. The embezzlement investigation? It's picking up steam. Trevor's in real trouble? I nodded, even though she couldn't see me. Good. He deserves whatever's coming to him. After I hung up, I sat in silence for a while, processing everything. Part of me felt guilty for what we'd done, but a larger part felt vindicated. They'd made their choices. Now they were facing the consequences. My thoughts were interrupted by a knock at the door. I opened it to find Lucas, looking grim. "We've got a situation," he said without preamble. I frowned. "What's going on?" Lucas sighed. "Isabella's outside. She wants to talk to you." My heart raced. "What? Why?" "She says she has nowhere else to go," Lucas explained. "She's asking to stay here." I shook my head vehemently. "No way. Absolutely not." "I agree," Lucas said. "But this might be an opportunity." I raised an eyebrow. "What do you mean?" Lucas leaned in close. "The assault allegations? We could get her to recant. On camera." I considered this for a moment. It was manipulative, sure, but after everything Isabella had done? "Okay," I said finally. "Let's do it." Lucas nodded. "I'll set up the Ring camera. You talk to her." A few minutes later, I opened the front door to find Isabella standing there, looking disheveled and desperate. "Sebastian," she said, her voice breaking, "please, I need your help." I steeled myself against the urge to comfort her. "What do you want, Isabella?" She looked at me with tear-filled eyes. "I have nowhere to go. Trevor, he left me. Please, can I stay here? Just for a few days?" I crossed my arms. "And why should I help you after everything you've done?" Isabella's shoulders slumped. "I know I hurt you. I'm so sorry, Sebastian. I'll do anything. I'll even drop the assault charges." I raised an eyebrow. "The assault charges that you made up, you mean?" She nodded miserably. "Yes. I lied. You never touched me. I was just angry and scared." "Say that again," I said, my voice hard. "For the record." Isabella looked confused but complied. "I lied about the assault. You never hurt me, Sebastian. I made it all up." I nodded, feeling a mix of satisfaction and sadness. "Thank you for telling the truth, Isabella. But you can't stay here." Her face crumpled. "But where am I supposed to go?" I shrugged, trying to ignore the pang in my chest. "That's not my problem anymore. You made your choices, Isabella. Now you have to live with them." As I closed the door on her tearful face, I felt a strange mix of emotions. Part of me wanted to take her in, to comfort her, but I knew I couldn't. That chapter of my life was over. I turned to find Lucas watching me, a look of approval on his face. "You did good, Sebastian. That confession is exactly what we needed." I nodded, suddenly feeling exhausted. "Yeah, I just hope it's worth it." Lucas clapped me on the shoulder. "It will be. Trust me, this is the beginning of the end. Isabella and Trevor are going down, and you're going to come out on top." As I watched Isabella's retreating figure through the window, I couldn't help but wonder about the cost of revenge. But then I remembered her betrayal, the pain she'd caused me, and I pushed the doubt aside. This was justice, I told myself, and justice, no matter how painful, had to be served. The day after Isabella's desperate plea at my doorstep, I sat in Lucas's office, watching the Ring camera footage of her confession. Her tear-stained face filled the screen as her words played back. "I lied about the assault. You never hurt me, Sebastian. I made it all up." Lucas paused the video and turned to me. "This is gold, Sebastian. With this, we can not only get the assault charges dropped, but also strengthen our position in the divorce proceedings." I nodded, feeling a mix of relief and lingering anger. "What's our next move?" Lucas leaned back in his chair. "We need to be strategic about how we use this. I think we should arrange a meeting with Isabella and her lawyer." "You want to confront her directly?" I asked, surprised. Lucas nodded. "I do. We'll show them what we have and see how they react. It might just push Isabella to settle quickly and quietly." I considered this for a moment. "All right. Set it up." 2 days later, we sat across from Isabella and her lawyer, a sharp-looking woman named Sarah, in a conference room at Lucas's firm. Isabella looked pale and drawn, avoiding my gaze. Lucas started the meeting. "Thank you for coming. We've asked you here because we have some new evidence that significantly impacts our case. Sarah leaned forward. What kind of evidence? Without a word, Lucas played the video of Isabella's confession. As her voice filled the room, Isabella's face drained of color. When the video ended, Sarah turned to Isabella. Is this true? Did you lie about the assault? Isabella nodded miserably. Yes. I was angry and scared. I didn't think. Sarah cut her off with a raised hand, then turned back to us. What do you want? Lucas smiled. Full retraction of the assault allegations, for starters. And we want Isabella to agree to an uncontested divorce with a favorable split of assets for my client. Sarah started to protest, but Isabella interrupted her. I'll do it. Whatever Sebastian wants. I just want this to be over. I spoke for the first time since the meeting began. Why, Isabella? Why did you do it? She met my eyes, tears welling up. I was scared, Sebastian. I knew I'd messed up, and I thought if I made you look bad, it would somehow make what I did less awful. I'm so sorry. I shook my head. Sorry doesn't cut it, Isabella. You could have ruined my life with those lies. I know, she whispered. I'll do whatever it takes to make it right. Lucas took over, outlining the terms of the divorce settlement. As he and Sarah hammered out the details, I watched Isabella. The woman I'd loved, who I'd thought I knew so well, now seemed like a stranger. When the meeting ended, Isabella tried to speak to me one last time. Sebastian, I held up a hand. Don't. It's over, Isabella. Let's just move on with our lives. As we left the conference room, Lucas clapped me on the back. You did well in there. How are you feeling? I let out a long breath. Relieved, I guess, and ready for this to be over. Lucas nodded. We're almost there. Just a few more steps, and you'll be free. As we walked out of the building, I felt a weight lifting from my shoulders. The end was in sight, and for the first time in weeks, I felt hope for the future. The weeks following Isabella's confession were a whirlwind of legal proceedings and paperwork. Lucas worked tirelessly, using the confession video and the other evidence we'd gathered to build an ironclad case. One morning, I arrived at the courthouse for what we hoped would be the final hearing. Lucas met me at the entrance, looking confident. Ready for this? He asked as we climbed the steps. I nodded. More than ready. Let's end this. Inside, we took our seats. Isabella and her lawyer sat on the other side of the courtroom, Isabella looking small and defeated. The judge entered, and the proceedings began. Lucas presented our case, methodically laying out the evidence. The live stream video, the security footage from his house, and finally, Isabella's confession. As the confession played in the courtroom, I watched the judge's face. His expression hardened as he listened to Isabella admit to her lies. When the video ended, the judge turned to Isabella. Mrs. Bennett, do you have anything to say for yourself? Isabella stood, her voice shaking. No, Your Honor. Everything in that video is true. I lied about the assault, and I deeply regret my actions. The judge nodded gravely. Very well. In light of this evidence, I am dismissing all charges against Mr. Bennett. Furthermore, I am granting the divorce as requested, with the asset division as agreed upon in the settlement. He turned to me. Mr. Bennett, you are free to go. The false allegations against you will be expunged from your record. Relief washed over me as Lucas shook my hand. Congratulations, Sebastian. It's over. As we left the courtroom, Anna was waiting for us. How did it go? She asked anxiously. I couldn't help but smile. We won. It's done. Anna hugged me tightly. I'm so glad, Seb. You deserve this victory. Lucas cleared his throat. And that's not all. I just got word about Trevor. We both turned to him. What happened? I asked. Lucas grinned. The embezzlement investigation paid off. Trevor was arrested this morning. He's facing serious charges. I let out a low whistle. Wow. I almost feel sorry for him. Anna raised an eyebrow. Almost? I shrugged. Okay, not really. He made his choices. As we walked out of the courthouse, I felt lighter than I had in months. The nightmare was finally over. Lucas turned to me. So, what now? How does it feel to be a free man? I took a deep breath, savoring the moment. It feels amazing. Like I can finally start living again? Anna smiled. Well, I'd say this calls for a celebration. Dinner's on me tonight. As we headed to Anna's car, I couldn't help but feel a surge of gratitude for these two people who had stood by me through everything. Thank you both, I said suddenly. I couldn't have gotten through this without you. Lucas squeezed my shoulder. That's what friends are for, man. We've got your back. Anna nodded in agreement. Always, Seb. Now come on, let's go celebrate your new beginning. As we drove away from the courthouse, I felt a chapter of my life closing. But more importantly, I felt a new one beginning, full of possibilities and hope. 6 months after the divorce was finalized, I stood in front of the mirror, adjusting my tie. So much had changed since that fateful night when I'd caught Isabella cheating. A knock at the door interrupted my thoughts. Come in, I called. Anna poked her head in, grinning. Looking sharp, cuz. You ready for this? I took a deep breath. As ready as I'll ever be. You sure about this double date idea? Anna rolled her eyes. Trust me, Sebastian. Madison is great. You two will hit it off. I followed Anna out to the living room, where Lucas was waiting with a blonde woman I assumed was Madison. Lucas made the introductions. Sebastian, this is Madison. Madison, meet Sebastian. Madison smiled warmly, extending her hand. It's nice to finally meet you, Sebastian. I've heard a lot about you. As we shook hands, I felt a spark of connection. All good things, I hope? Madison laughed. Mostly, though Lucas did mention you're a bit of a workaholic. I shot Lucas a mock glare. Traitor. The four of us headed out to dinner, the conversation flowing easily. As the night progressed, I found myself drawn to Madison's warmth and quick wit. Over dessert, Madison turned to me. So, Sebastian, Anna mentioned you've had a rough year. How are you doing now? I considered the question. Honestly, better than I have in a long time. The divorce was tough, but it taught me a lot about myself. Madison nodded sympathetically. I can relate. I went through a bad breakup last year. It takes time to heal. It does, I agreed. But I'm ready to move forward now. Focus on the future, you know? Madison's eyes sparkled. I like the sound of that. As we left the restaurant, Lucas pulled me aside. So, what do you think of Madison? I couldn't help but smile. She's great. Thanks for setting this up. Lucas clapped me on the back. Anytime, man. It's good to see you happy again. Over the next few weeks, Madison and I started seeing each other regularly. Her kindness and understanding helped me open up in ways I hadn't been able to since the divorce. One evening, as we walked through the park, Madison took my hand. Can I ask you something, Sebastian? I squeezed her hand. Of course. She hesitated for a moment. Are you over Isabella? I mean, really over her? I stopped walking, turning to face Madison. Yes, I am. What happened with Isabella was painful, but it's in the past. I've learned from it, grown from it, but I'm ready to move on. I took a deep breath. With you, if you'll have me. Madison's face lit up. I'd like that very much. As we continued our walk, hand in hand, I felt a sense of peace settle over me. The pain and betrayal of the past year seemed distant now, overshadowed by the promise of a brighter future. Later that week, I met Lucas for our regular lunch. He grinned as I sat down. You're looking chipper. Things going well with Madison? I nodded, unable to keep the smile off my face. Really well. She's amazing, Lucas. Lucas leaned back, looking satisfied. I'm glad to hear it. You deserve to be happy, Sebastian. Thanks, I said. You know, I've been thinking a lot about everything that happened. With Isabella, the divorce, all of it. Lucas raised an eyebrow. Yeah? What about it? I took a sip of water, gathering my thoughts. I think it made me stronger. Wiser, maybe. I know what I want now, and what I won't tolerate. Lucas nodded approvingly. That's growth, my friend. You've come a long way. As we finished our lunch, I felt a surge of gratitude for everything I'd been through. The betrayal, the pain, the legal battles, it had all led me here, to this moment. I was free. I was happy. And I was ready for whatever the future might bring. That evening, as Madison and I cooked dinner together in my kitchen, I watched her laugh at one of my terrible jokes. In that moment, I knew with certainty that the worst was behind me. I had emerged from the ordeal stronger and wiser. With friends like Lucas and Anna by my side, and the promise of a new love with Madison, I faced the future with hope and excitement. The chapter with Isabella was closed. A new one, filled with possibility and joy, was just beginning.
This is where our story comes to an end. Share your thoughts in the comments section. Thanks for your precious time. If you enjoyed this story, then please make sure you subscribe to this channel. That would help me a lot. Click on the video you see on the screen, and I will see you there.